Good afternoon and welcome to the fifth episode of Lunch with TCCU. I am your host, Mrs. Melissa Nichols, Marketing Manager here at Vincent and the Grenadines Teachers Cooperative Credit Union, and we're happy to have you share lunch with us today as we learn about budgeting basics. And today, discussing all things budgeting with us is Financial Controller of SVGTCCU, Shari Hooper-Scott. Mrs. Scott, welcome to Lunch with TCCU.
Thank you, Mrs. Nichols. It is a pleasure for me to be
We are so happy, and I know our viewers, while they're enjoying their lunch, um, would be uh, anticipating the information you'll be providing them with today. Before we get into today's topic, we want to encourage you to follow us on our social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Follow us to stay connected with Teachers Credit Union and also share the live. You may have a friend on your socials who could benefit from the information as well. So, without further ado, let's get started, Mrs. Scott. Could you tell us what is budgeting for those persons who may not be so sure of what budgeting is?
Okay, in the simplest form, budgeting is actually creating a plan of how you wish to spend your money. It's for all the details, whether they're simple or not, the most simplest of form is just making a plan of how you wish to spend all the money that you have accumulated over a period.
Okay, so that's so I look at how much money I have and then I break down how I'm going to spend. Okay, so why would you tell persons budgeting? Why is it important for us to have a plan for our money?
Budgeting becomes important for our money because we all know that there is a term that we use in our colloquial language that speaks about sometimes it seems as if we get put under a fan. As quickly as the money comes to our account, it disappears. If you have a plan for how you spend your money, you would always keep track of what exactly you would have done with your money. Now, it seems to us as if it's going through a fan because we cannot recount what we would have done with our money. And that is not the best thing for us to do. In our society, majority of us get paid monthly. Some persons it's fortnightly. But if you have a plan for your money, it will eventually lead down to the fact that you are taking care of all your responsibilities with the income that you have earned as you rightfully should.
Okay, so that means when we plan for our money, we know exactly
What you go
what we're going to do with it, what and we allocate to our expenses and so.
I could show you a little plan of what it means when I say plan. Most of the time, we seem to think that we should keep it in our head, and that is so often a grave mistake that we make. The plan that I refer to is something like this. You write down your income sources. The income sources will be all the areas you would accumulate your monies from. You look at your salary, and the salary figure that you use for budgeting is after statutory deductions or tax. You could put a figure there. Let us say your salary after all deductions, $1,500. A lot of us have a side hustle. Whatever you do to bring in extra money throughout the week, throughout the month, however you do it, let us say that extra money you receive from your side hustle is $800. And sometimes we receive remittances from family, friends, for whatever. And let us put $1,000. And this is all in each 1,000. Okay, that gives us a total. So for the month of August, your total income is $3,300. It therefore means whatever you're going to spend, whatever responsibility you have for the month of August, it cannot exceed $3,300. You make a list of all of your expenses. Some of us have mortgages or rent. Rent, let us say that's $1,200. Then you have utilities. And for utilities, I'll put a figure, $500. You can also have groceries. The bill for groceries for the month is $550. Transportation, whether it is that you have to take the public transportation system or if you're driving, and we put an amount for transportation of $250. These figures may not relate to everybody's situation, but it's just a guide to show you what you can do in your individual position. We have phone and internet. And we assign an amount of $200. Entertainment, that is for the person who likes to splurge on themselves a little. The entertainment bill, we assign $100. Subscription, something that we have become so accustomed to with the introduction of Netflix to us. Miscellaneous is used for any other little thing that may come up, and you could assign $100 to that. Then you have some savings. Now the savings that you have here is after you would have tabulated all your expenses, subtracted from your income, the difference would result in the savings amount. Based on the figures that we have here, the savings amount is $350. And so it brings us back to our total income of $3,300. This being the case, we recognize that we are not overspending, and that is a good thing. Now, Mrs. Nichols asked a while ago, why is it important when you do a budget? When you document something like this to spend our money, when you have a plan, it's not in your head. It helps you to make adjustments. Now, for example, if your grocery bill goes from $550 to $600, you have $350 in your savings. You go back, you adjust the $50, you shift it up there, you still have $3,300. Having it in your head would not allow you to see where you are underspending and where you can raise the money to, where you can assign the money to in terms of your expenses. It also helps if you have particular needs as you go forward. At some point in our life, we know we cannot work right through life. There is something that we have become accustomed to in our work life called retirement. And retirement comes with lots of changes, particularly this line of total income. When you're not working, you don't have a full salary like what you do now, but you would always have these because this is what you live on. And so while you do budgeting month by month, it allows you to do something as simple as saving towards retirement. Another important reason why we can also develop a habit of budgeting, health. It's another thing that comes upon us ever so often without any indication of what would be happening to us. In a situation like this, you always put something aside for the if the uneventful event such as unfavorable health. Another thing that has become very popular among us is debt. And sometimes you have a family living overseas and the person dies And sometimes you really, really want to go to show support and you don't have the finances to do so. The way you live, if you continually to just get your salary and spend it on whatever, however you feel, it gives you less and less money to save towards these important things. And that's the reason why I would want to encourage everyone. It may seem simple and trivial, but it can go a very long way in the way we live our lives and the way we take responsibilities and the way we approach how we spend the money that we earn. So this is a good thing that you can adapt. The figures you could adjust and make it your own personal figures. They may not resemble your current situation, but at some point in life you do something like this and you make the adjustment as you go forward. Another thing is that we all have these fancy phones on other gadgets with some nice spreadsheets and nice little apps that you could design. You don't have to write them down, but you could put them in an app, and as you go along, you check off. I would have already paid my mortgage or my rent. You check that off. Make sure you cover all the necessities from your salary before you start to splurge on things that are just wants or things that you can do without. Another thing that we would have become quite familiar with is credit card debt. It is a debt that most of us get carried away with, and sometimes it is not a necessity why it gets to the point where it is becoming a burden on our back. And it's just bad habits that as we grow older, you realize I could do without this. Then you start to making these cutbacks, putting most of it towards saving because of the reasons that I would have identified not too long ago.
Okay, great. So in essence, the steps that we need to take in order to plan what we do with our money is we list what our incomes are, what our salaries, if we have extra income from a little side job, then we list what our expenses are. We make sure that we set aside something for saving, and then we adjust that as we go along each month. So those are the steps. And as Mrs. Scott said, it's as simple as writing it down in a notebook or using your device, your phone or your tablet and create a spreadsheet. And online there are a lot of budget templates that persons can download and use
Yes,
to help
that's true.
them. Do this. So I you highlighted something that I would want us to touch on briefly. Well, maybe not briefly, but I think it's important for us to talk about the importance of budgeting for saving, especially retirement and that emergency fund that you touched on there. Why are those things important?
Okay, before I get into answering Mrs. Nichols' question, while we look at why it is important in budgeting, we also would want to remember that tracking our income is quite important. While we track our income, we have to define the goals we want. They would be short term and they would be long term. Retirement for me, I would put that in a long term goal. And that's the importance of creating a budget. Short term would be these expenses that would have been listed before. And if you look at the medium term, whether it is you want to acquire a degree or you want to travel, get to learn something new, those would facilitate as medium term financial goals. And the reason for this is we do not live in a society where we can just wake up tomorrow and say, I would like to earn a bachelor and have the finance right away. We have not been cultured like that either. And a lot of us, we do not belong to the category where those monies are readily available for us as we get the opportunity. It therefore means that while we earn, we have to set aside something for that. Now, the importance of building for emergency funding. One of the greatest things that setting aside monies for emergency, what it does for us is that it offers us financial security. When you know you would have set aside money for whatever reason or season of your life it may become necessary for, it gives you a sense of pride to know that I didn't have to go to A, B, C, and D to ask for it. I knew that I would set it aside and I had a starting point. It may never be the total amount, but if you have a starting point to bargain with, it gives you financial security. It also acts as a buffer to you. Let us go back to the point of saving for a bachelor's degree. Whether or not you got a grant or a scholarship, sometimes it means that you have to go and get a student loan. You would not be able to get a student loan just like that unless somebody is going to be so kind and take up the full responsibility for you as an adult. And most of the times in our society, everybody has their financial responsibilities all worked out already. And making room for an added individual becomes a tight shift in anyone's life into it. And so the fact that you would have set aside something, a financial institution is going to pay great attention to that in the way you manage your money, getting to this point, and what they expect you to do with the money they're going to lend you. And it sort of look like a stepping stone for you, seeing that you would have managed whatever little you would have achieved or earned thus far and the way you would have set aside for such. It gives you more leverage in terms of acquiring further financial assistance. And that's the financial security that I would want to mention to you. Another thing that it does for you when you have an emergency fund, it reduces stress. When you have no idea where you're going to get your money from, it is a burden on you, especially if it is of great importance to you. And so with the little that you would have set aside, you could always go back to it when the rainy days start pouring in. And above all else, it gives you the opportunity to have a better sleep during the night. It gives you one less thing to worry about as you go through your life. Opportunity readiness is also another thing that saving for rainy days allow us, or emergency fund allow us to tap into. When we see that, just like what I would have explained to you, you go for a loan, but you wouldn't get money to borrow oftentimes with zero money in your possession as well. And so as you go forth with these thoughts in your head, you know for a fact whether you're going to buy a car, you have to have upfront money there to do whatever as the institution rules and conditions are. And if you have money set aside already to deal with whatever financial obligation you're getting into, the readiness that the opportunity provides, and for you also to be ready to fit into that environment gives you a plus and a thumbs up as you go forward with your emergency. So those are some of the things, Mrs. Nichols, that an emergency fund helps you to achieve as you plan and you go ahead towards it and you walk towards it. Sometimes it might seem simple and it might seem like something that you can easily do, but it requires lots of discipline and it requires consistent activity.
Well, that's great information. I believe that our viewers would be all planning ahead now, making sure that we know where we are spending our money and looking for ways that we can decrease our expenses but increase our savings and maybe even find one or two little ways that we can increase the income column on our budget. Um, Something I also wanted to highlight, Mrs. Scott, and you could give me your opinion on this, is that we, we find that a lot of us are maybe 1 or 2 paychecks away from using everything because we don't save for those that emergency fund. Um, I don't know if you agree.
Well, based on the nature of our job, from time to time we get to this real life situation as highlighted by Mrs. Nickel. And not every person who fits that category would have been um, a busy spender or I don't care. Sometimes situation approaches us and it pushes us back financially based on the nature of it and the amount of money that we have to dedicate towards it. And just as I've said before, if it depends on how disciplined you are with your savings, because there would be times when, just like what I would have shown, going back to the example that I would have highlighted before, sometimes you may just spend $500 on your grocery bill. If the extra $50 doesn't give me a point to say, I'll just buy something that I don't really have a need for it, but I'll just buy it. The $50 towards your savings. Because as Mrs. Nichols would have highlighted, there would be times when you are one or two paychecks from losing everything. And the more you save, the better it is for your personal financial situation. As long as you would have worked and earned, somewhere along the journey, all of us could relate to coming to a point where we struggle financially with something, some decision. It's not every month that you have surplus, but if you develop the habit of saving, there's always something that you can tap into. It may never be totally enough to pull you out of a hole, but you could always have a starting place with savings in your position. One of the things, Mrs. Nichols, that I forgot to mention earlier on in the presentation is that while we do budget, everybody's budgeting goals are different. I like this method because it allows me to adjust as I like. Some persons like to physically take the cash out, put it aside with its small envelopes, plastic bags, and label them. That is another part of how people budget. Remember, I said initially, it is creating a plan of how you wish to spend your money. So it may not necessarily be this way, but if you're into the habit of taking out, this is for my light, this is for my water, this is for food, this is for whatever you do it for, that as well is a way of budgeting. And while you make the adjustment, because you're physically seeing the things, just like how I can move my adjustments up and down on paper or on the app, you can do that if you have them in the parcels already, moving from one to the next, and it helps you to be better prepared for life's financial crises or whatever opportunities that may come towards us.
That's a great point, and I think it's a good way to end the session. So be mindful that budget, budgeting is really, as you said in the beginning, it's a plan for how we spend our money and allocate our money for each month, and what may work for me may not work for you. So as long as we all have a plan that we can understand and that works for us and that we're able to review, um, I think that's the important point that we need to bring home there. So the steps for creating budget folks, as Mr. Scott highlighted, we need to list what our incomes are, all of our income. Then we list our expenses, all of our expenses. We allocate a certain amount for our expenses. Then we ensure that we save, and then we make the necessary adjustments. We we review and we adjust as we go to ensure that we can better spend our money and not overspend it. And if you know that you budgeted, as Mrs. Scott highlighted, 550 for the groceries and the bill is only 200, transfer that 150 over to your savings. That's the idea, right? Right? So that's good. And here at Teachers Credit Union, we do have a variety of saving products that can work for you. Our interest rates on our savings accounts are quite wonderful, Mrs. Scott. I think we offer, um, yes, 2.2% is the lowest.
The lowest.
mentioned, we do have a retirement savings plan for those persons who are looking to increase um, the amount of money they have to budget for retirement. We have a retirement savings plan. So do stop in and let's talk about how we can help you achieve those financial goals that you have for yourself. On that note, we say thank you for sharing your lunch with us today as we talked about the basics of budgeting. We thank Mrs. Scott for sharing her knowledge with us today, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode. And do enjoy the rest of your day.